this evening. Officer James Giovanetti, welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, and we have from Tillsonburg, Larry Scanlon, who is the chair of the Tillsonburg Police Services Board. So welcome to you, Larry. Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Very good. And I think that's all of our guests for today. So we will start. Board members, any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest?
None.
No.
Seeing none. Thank you. Madam Secretary, any preliminary matters that we need to cover off prior to starting?
None.
Good. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Very good. Could I have a seconder for that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I don't think there's anything from our in-camera meeting that needs to be brought forward into open. Madam Secretary, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we will convene into the public session, and which brings us to item 7, which is our Constable James Giovanetti. And James, you are now our mental health officer, and you're going to do a little bit of a presentation for us today.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for joining us.
thanks for having me. Happy to be here. So starting about 5-6 years ago, the OPP really started to recognize the importance of having specially trained officers teamed up with mental health clinicians, whether they be specially trained nurse or social worker. There's now something called an MCERT team, which is Mobile Crisis Response Team, in 86% of the OPP detachments across the province. And I'm very happy to report that Dufferin has the newest MCERT team, which has an officer, a specially trained officer available for 40 hours per week. That is teamed up with a specially trained clinician from the Canadian Mental Health Agency. And the CMHA workers are actually available 12 hours per day, 7 days a week. And what we've been doing is having any of our officers give them a call, because they're available not only just to the crisis team officers like myself, but to any of our frontline staff. Since the 17th of March until today, our MCERT unit has been involved in one way or another with 158 different calls for service. And that's actually resulted in over 100 referrals being made to different community partners. So that could be to Canadian Mental Health to assist persons that are in a crisis. It could be to Family Transition Place. It could even be to Dufferin Child and Family Services. So what we're finding is a lot of success in diverting people from the hospital and keeping them in the community and connecting them to community resources. Right now, we're in a very unique position because we're very much in the beginning stages of our program, and we are able to tailor the program to what is going to work best for Dufferin County. And one of the things that we are hoping to do is also start coordinating some education and wellness nights or afternoons for our members. Because if our members are staying healthy, that's going to allow us to provide the best service to the community. Yeah, it really is a whole new world of opportunity for us. And we've been getting a lot of really, really good feedback from our community partners, as well as some of the people we're interacting with. And to give you an idea, we had a call a few weeks ago where historically this person will become violent. The person is taken to hospital, and it's not we're keeping that person safe at that point in time, but that's not the best way to get a person help sometimes. And by having a crisis worker with us, we were actually able to divert that from the hospital completely. Having that properly trained clinical person in there allowed us to come up with a safety plan and de-escalated the situation, and it resulted in a better outcome. And that's not just for the individual, but for us too. Officers aren't becoming injured. Our persons in crisis certainly aren't becoming injured. And down the road, when officers are going to be dealing with that individual again, they're less likely to become confrontational with us because their last interaction with us was a positive one. One of the other, I would say, memorable successes we've had recently was a person who was repeatedly calling us. And when I say repeatedly, I'm referring to multiple times a day. And by getting them connected to CMHA's crisis team, what's actually happening is when they're feeling unsafe, instead of picking up the phone and calling star OPP or 911, they're actually calling the Here 24/7 crisis number. So what that's effectively doing is allowing us to be more efficient while getting people connected to the resource that they really need at that moment in time. And I expect as time goes on, we're going to be sharing or able to share more success stories with you.
That's excellent, James. Just out of curiosity, what's the wellness nights that you've got for your members? What's that? Can you give some examples of what you do on those?
Well, and what I was saying was that, that's part of the vision of the program. Unfortunately, right now with COVID and the SOPs that we have with OPP, we have to be very careful about the gatherings that we're having.
Yes.
But my intention is to stay connected with Sean and Colleen from the fire department because they run them every 2 months, or they were running them every 2 months pre-COVID. What I envision happening is 1 month it's going to be the fire department, 1 month it's going to be us. And hopefully we can even, rope in Dufferin EMS and just continue a cycle, right? Because we're all dealing with the same things. And, with the recognition that mental health truly does affect each and every one of us, it's all the more reason for us to start working together to keep each other well.
Well, but what do you do with them, James, on a wellness night? Do you get together and just chat with each other or play games? I just don't know.
Okay, so for example, mindfulness meditation, right, where you would do something like body scans, where you're sitting in a position where it's comfortable for your body, and you're able to start going from one section of your body to another section of your body. And what you're doing is you're taking your brain from being up here and all the anxieties and the stresses of everyday life and bringing them truly into the moment. And it's been shown that it lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your cortisol levels, and it actually increases the amount of brain activity in different centers of your brain. So what we would be doing, for example, is having someone come in who teaches mindfulness meditation and giving people the opportunity to explore that. Another idea would be having a nutritionist come in and talking about healthy meal preps, things like that, or even like a fitness trainer, for example, just things that people can do to improve their overall well-being.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just add in there that one of the things that's important to find out is when you get a bunch of police officers, a bunch of EMS, a bunch of firefighters together, and they start to realize they're all having the same feelings, just to be able to work through that, to know that, oh, that feeling I had or that reason I couldn't sleep last night, that's a norm, right? So just being able to pull everyone together to say that, oh, we all are on the same page, that I'm not feeling different thoughts than the other people, or I'm not having different emotions. Sometimes that's more wellness than anything, is just for the guys to recognize that everybody's on the same page. So that whole wellness piece is so important, right?
Go ahead. Mary, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, James, if I could ask you the question. I was wondering what was happening with the situation table because of COVID. Are you meeting by Zoom or something, or how is that working?
Yep. So the situation table is still meeting every week during or through Zoom during COVID. And some of the community partners have actually engaged in something called the Integrated Crisis Response. So 3 times a week, some of the community partners are meeting to discuss clients and their needs. So it's like case management discussions, which we as the police are not involved in due to privacy concerns, but people in the community are getting connected more than ever.
Mhm. That's good. Terrific. Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's excellent. Does anybody else have any questions for James? I just had one other one, and I didn't want to monopolize things, but I'm curious. So March 17th, you mentioned as a date, and since that day, you've had 158 calls. So, here we are, May 18th. So 2 months, 60 days. So you're getting 3 calls a day. Is that what you were anticipating? It seems like a lot to me.
So one of the things, to be completely honest with you, is that Dufferin County for a very long time has lacked support services for people. And when we were 3 individual police services, that also complicated trying to bring a program like this into place because it just wasn't feasible. Now, with us all being under the same umbrella, we're able to pull in the resources from OPP to get this off of the ground. And to be honest, I wasn't expecting there to be as many as 3 calls a day, but there's some days where there's 8 calls, and there's some days where there's none. But on those days where there's none, that is when it's prime time for myself and a crisis worker to actually hop into a car and start doing some mobile visits, checking in with people that CMHA has been supporting. So they call them downtime visits. So people that CMHA has been supporting for a period of time, and they do periodic check-ins. And that's one thing I should have mentioned, was that with the way the program is set up right now, although we're not integrated with CMHA in the detachment yet, we're looking at sort of a blended model, because CMHA is going to be responsible for some other duties within the community, like after-hours hospital assessments and things like that, or even providing support to people when police are not required. So, like I said, we're still very much in the infancy, but even though we're so new to this, we're still having a very meaningful impact. And the intention is to continue moving that forward.
Got it. James, when you go with CMHC to those calls, that sounds like a great thing to do. I'm just curious, do you go in your uniform with the apparatuses of your uniform as well, like your weapons and whatnot, or and how is that received?
Sorry, was there anything?
No, go ahead.
So we're very lucky here in Dufferin. We have a very supportive command staff through the inspector and staff sergeants. And the way that it's going to be working for us in terms of whether or not I will be in, plain clothes, or if there's another officer that's substituting for me being in plain clothes, it's going to be at the discretion of the crisis worker. Because in some circumstances, us being in uniform can actually be very beneficial. If you're, considering that we might be dealing with an elderly person who may have, early onset dementia, and they're very paranoid. So 2 people coming in plain clothes to their door may not go over so well, whereas, seeing the uniform could actually bring them some sense of peace and safety. On the flip side, having us in uniform all the time with everyone could create some issues. And the reason being, sometimes people who are struggling feel like everyone is noticing and all the eyes are on them. So if there's a police car, parked outside on the road, and their neighbors see a police officer walking up to the house, for that individual, it can create a lot more stress and anxiety. So it's a delicate balance, and it's a balance that we're really taking in the lead from the professional mental health clinicians on this.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for James, board members? No. I think I think what you're doing is super, super important, and especially given the circumstances that we're all in, I worry the next shoe to drop is a mental crisis for a lot of folks. It's been a struggle. So I applaud you and I wish you well in your new role. I hope you're very successful.
Thank you. And Inspector Ward has been a very large driving force in this. So Dufferin's very lucky to have the command staff that we do that want a program like this in place.
That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, very good. I don't think that there's a motion to receive there in any way. It's just a report. So we will move on to item 8. Thank you again, James.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Yeah. Item 8 is my new friend, Larry Scanlon. And Larry, I really appreciate you joining us today. And why the chair of Tillsonburg Police Services Board is here, everyone, is in Dufferin, we've been asked to reconsider an amalgamation alignment of police services boards. And Larry has actually been involved in police services board for 20 plus years. So I thought what we could do is just learn a little bit from his experiences and ask him some questions as we go through our own journey here. And so Larry, I don't know if that's a good takeoff for you, but I'll turn the floor over to you.
Great, great segue. Thanks for the invitation. It's always nice to see how other boards operate. I would mention the mental health program that your constable was describing. We've had one for approximately 2 years. One of the early ones, if not one of the earliest in Oxford County, between Woodstock Police Service and Oxford County OPP. And the response has been nothing short of phenomenal. It's reducing our numbers, our calls for service numbers just for our municipality alone. We're reaching the 650 mark for mental health calls. And this program has done a lot to reduce them, and it's also done a lot to get help for the people that need help. That, as the constable said, those options just weren't there a few years ago. So I want to commend your command staff for moving forward with that, because they do work really well. The discussion I reached out to Todd a couple of months ago, I guess now, and I was more curious as to how Orangeville was receiving the direction to go to a detachment board. Some background here: we have the Woodstock Police Service, of course, which is its own police service, but then there are 7 distinct municipalities in the county of Oxford. 5 of them have contracts with the OPP, and 2 of them are under Section 5.1. The 5 have been, Tillsonburg went to the OPP in 2000. Again, one of the early areas to switch over from a municipal force. We had a force of 21 at that time. And a side note here, our cost per household in 1998, which was when they started looking at moving to, for a lot of different reasons, but when they started looking to the OPP, our cost per household was $411 per household. 23 years later, our cost per household is $434. And I firmly believe we have every bit as good policing today as we did 23 years ago, and in many areas much better.
Did Inspector pay you to say that?
If this is taped, could you please send one to the commander? Now, I should qualify that by saying I'm not sure it's better under Tony's command, but it has been really good up until he got here. We are now experiencing our 3rd DC in that length of time. We've been fortunate to have great people sitting in that chair. looked at the detachment board. I tried to get into it as much as we could in depth. It's been discussed for probably 3 to 4 years. It came up at conferences early and came up at zone meetings early. I think a lot of us kind of thought that it would never happen. Maybe should have paid more attention at the time, but when the act was printed and published, then we realized that this is going to be something that we're faced with. The problems we have, and I think you have similar problems, and that's why I reached out to Todd, is the number of municipalities you deal with. How do you establish one board for representing everybody in Dufferin County? For us, it would be 7 different municipalities. Solgen has said, well, you know, you can have as many people on the board as you like. Well, then the argument starts, well, how many do you want? We've had some people say, oh, well, I sit on a board of 16 and it works fine. I struggle with a board of 5 sometimes trying to get agreement. And regardless, that's one issue. And a bigger issue in that is who then becomes chair? You're still going to have one chair. In our case, if you have a chair that's chosen on the north end of our county, which is a fair number of miles away, because we're at the very bottom of the county, do they have an interest or do they care about what's happening in our particular municipality? So when you have these discussions around the table, as I'm sure you do, about what's happening in Orangeville, those get washed away when you have 5 or 6 other groups that are being represented.
So your board, Mr. Scanlon, you have written a letter and shared what your decision is as a board, or what you would like to happen as a board. And certainly the Solicitor General will make the decision on what's going to happen, but your input into that is you want to maintain your autonomy. Is that correct?
Yes, it's absolutely correct. We ended up going, we have, because of the nature of this beast now, we have chairs meetings. And through the most current chairs meeting, we came up with a unanimous decision to pass a resolution on to our own independent councils, voicing our opinion. We weren't asked for it, and the Solicitor General did not solicit that information, but we thought if we don't do something, our thoughts could fade away. And it was unanimous that at the day we did it, the 5 boards wanted to remain status quo. That was a few months ago. We are now in a position where the town of Tillsonburg Council has agreed to pursue status quo. The town of Ingersoll, the same, and the township of Norwich is doing the same. The 2 smaller municipalities, actually there's 4, but the 2 that currently have a contract are still a little bit in limbo. They're trying to decide whether they should join a neighboring township because they're relatively small, and they were all 3-member boards.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Go ahead, please.
How about your remuneration? Did you want to speak at that at all? Or I think you're fairly comparable in size, a little bit smaller, I guess, but
yeah, we're currently around 20,000. Our stipend for our board it's actually 5,200 for the chair and 4,200 for each member. And I was told when I agreed to take the position, and actually it was by a commander, said that this is the job that should be paying $100,000 a year that you're going to be getting at that time, 4,500 to do. So hang on really tight. And actually, I didn't even know that it paid anything. However, having spent the length of time that I have, sitting in the chair and the amount of work involved, the 100,000 was closer to where it should be, I think, many times. You lose a lot of sleep in this job. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about things that have either have happened or need to happen. It's the reality of it, but I have enjoyed it. I'm looking at my last year and a half, roughly, or the end of this council term. Although there are some people that saying that I'm not, but I think I've had enough. Time to let somebody else do it. And it's getting, with the new act, this is going to be really complicated.
Yeah.
Just the training alone is immense.
Yes. Okay. Board members, any questions for Mr. Scanlon?
I would just like to ask the last point, Mr. Scanlon, about training. Have your board, like 2 of our members have had to write this training thing that came from Solgen, and at the moment only the 2 of us that were provincially appointed have had to do that training. So I didn't know if any of your people or yourself have had to take that training.
No, I'm aware that our 2 OICs have taken the training. But near as I can tell, and the discussions I've had with the OIC, it doesn't relate to the new Community Policing Act. So it's something that they threw out there, I guess, just because we really didn't have any discussions. And the way they're talking, the length of time involved to do it is nothing compared to what we're going to be faced with. So I'm assuming there's a lot thicker book that's going to be generated sometime in the future.
Very good. Okay, any other questions from Mr. Scanlon, board members? No, seeing none. Larry, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much, and I'm grateful that you reached out. It was a great connection to have made, and just appreciate the learnings that you've been able to give us. And our board talked about our next steps in our closed meeting regarding this topic, and we're going to regroup, and we'll be out in the public with our stance in the not too distant future. So appreciate your time.
I look forward to hearing about your success, and we're not really sure where this is going to end up, quite honestly. We know what council wants to see, and we keep seeing the information from Solgen kind of backing off of their original decisions. The most recent has been, well, whatever you guys want. So it really seems to come down to what each individual council wants to see. And I believe if they pursue a single detachment, that should not be an issue.
Got it.
And thank you for the invitation, and good luck in the future.
Yeah, and all the best to you in your meeting tomorrow. So thank you again.
Yes, you're going to be there. It's going to be at 7:30 is when we meet.
Excellent. I'll be out for my jog, but I'll make sure I'm back in time.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Inspector Ward, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you, just out of courtesy, did you want to speak to that at all, or do you just want to let that one pass? And
no, I'm good. Again, good. At the end of the day, I will report to whoever and how many ever, right? So
purpose wasn't to put you on the spot. I just wanted to be courteous.
No, it's good. It's nice to hear different viewpoints from different areas, and ultimately, right. For me, it's whether there's 1 board, 7 boards, we'll make it work, right? So.
Agreed. Okay, so we're at the ward report time. We didn't talk ahead of time. I know you have your big one kind of every quarter. Is there things that you'd like to share at this time in the ward report?
You know what, Mr. Chair, I'll just touch on a couple things. Sure. First off, I just, it was good to have James Giovanetti come in and just kind of, show. And over the next few months, I wouldn't mind getting a few other people come in, just, little 10-minute presentations with some of the other programs we've started. So we'll move forward with that. James is very passionate about the mental health thing. So having that passion just means he's going to make this succeed one way or the other, right? So that's good to have. we'll just touch on a couple things. I mean, as you know, this is the time of year when traffic complaints start to come rolling in. So we're still dealing with those on an individual basis. I mean, a lot of them are perceived traffic complaints. We send guys out and they stand there with handheld radar and there's nothing, right? But again, it goes back to what I've explained before. You know, if you're standing on the sidewalk and a car goes by at 40 kilometers an hour, it looks like they're moving pretty quick. And so then these people call in, right? And so again, moving forward, we're trying to acquire some black cat speeding device that will get us some analytics. That way we're not putting resources in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? So that's something we're looking at. We've had a bit of an uptrend in thefts and vehicle thefts around Orangeville. Our community street crimes officers are engaged in that. To this date, I kind of asked for an update and they really didn't want to tell me because I think they're afraid I'll say something and that'll blow a lead for them. But they are engaged in that. And from what I'm seeing, a lot of the thefts of vehicles is they're leaving the area. So it's not a local issue. It's just we happen to be in the hot spot. And the message we're trying to get out to people, right? Stop leaving your keys in your car. Stop leaving your cars unlocked. And this is what we're finding, right? That we had a couple of vehicle thefts this week, and both of them were at a garage. The repairs had been done, and the keys were left in the cars. So
frustrating.
Right. So anyway, and the only other thing I'll touch on, as you're aware, we've had a few of those anti-mask demonstrations the last few Sundays. Again, we've put operation plans into place each Sunday for that. You know, we do our intel. We have officers in. We have our provincial liaison team officers come in, which are like plainclothes negotiating style officers that try to negotiate with the organizers to make sure it's peaceful. And I mean, over the last 3 or 4 weekends, we've had 0 issues. I think we've maxed out at about 10 people that show up. You know, it's very passive. They're not interfering with traffic, and at each time the organizer's been charged. So moving forward, if they continue, we're going to start to look at maybe expanding the charges. We have to be able to identify these people, so that becomes, you know, a part of our investigation is to identify them. And we don't want to ramp things up at the time of the incident, right? So it's going to be a passive approach, but you know, we're at a point now where, and we'll see what the legislation does in the next little while, but we're going to look at maybe expanding our range of charges on those. For the month from April till current, just under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, we've had 1 charge in Orangeville, and under the Reopening Act, we've had 4. So, and then under the Quarantine Act, we've had 0. So just to show that we are out there laying those charges, but we're trying not to, right? We want to educate the people, and we get it. This has been dragging on, and it's hard, especially when the weather changing now, to get people want to be outside. They want to do some stuff. And so again, we're just trying to educate them on the legislation and not take a heavy hand, only in cases where we really have to. So.
Could I just ask a quick question, Terry?
Sure.
What do you do with the vast numbers that are turning up at the parks?
So again, we're trying to educate those people that because the parks are open, and under the legislation, they can be in the parks as long as they're abiding by the rules, right?
Yep.
So as long as they're trying to maintain that safe distance, so again, it becomes an education piece where we try to educate them on, hey, you know what, try to keep the 6 feet. We can't, because the parks are open, and part of that legislation is that people can attend the parks. We just have to make sure that we try to educate them in fact to be as safe as you can. So
Very good. Any other questions for Inspector Ward? No. So I have a few. And none of these are they're softball questions, but they're just interaction questions that I've had as we've gone through the month. So Terry, normally if they were uncomfortable, I would have sent it to you ahead of time. So you're not on the hot seat here. Black Cat we're going to discuss later on in the agenda, so I'd love to get your feedback on that. And a lot of people are talking about that as a potential detractor. So I'm curious when we get to that item, there'll certainly be one. 40 kilometers an hour. Town council recently made a decision to change the town speeds to 40 on, the lightly traveled streets. And a resident had said to me that OPP was not enforcing them. I'm just curious, are you up and doing that now, or what is the position of the OPP in Orangeville on the 40 kilometers an hour?
Well, I mean, speeding is speeding, right? So we're enforcing speeding. We're not enforcing a specific 40 kilometers an hour. We're doing traffic enforcement, and that's how we do it within the town of Orangeville. So we're not out there specifically targeting the 40 kilometer zones. We're actually doing traffic enforcement throughout town.
And if you happen to be on a town street that was 40 kilometers an hour and someone was going 60, they're going to get a ticket. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, very good. Thank you for clearing that up. There has been commentary made to me about concerns about drugs in our town, and without naming streets, because I know those would be private investigations, but if people are watching this and they are suspecting that there might be a drug house in their neighborhood, or they're having concerns about something going on in their neighborhood, could you just reiterate what you want people to do about that?
So my advice would be to not call the chair of the police services board, not call the counselor, call the police, right? Yep. If you have concerns about things like that, call the police and let the police investigate or explain to you or talk to you or give you advice or listen to what you have to say. I mean, reaching out to a town official, I don't understand the logic in that. So people need to call the police if they see a crime.
Perfect. Did I lead you down the garden path well there?
No, it's just kind of as you can see, I kind of get fired up on that one because I don't know why or how it got to a position in Orangeville where people are constantly, for police issues, reaching out to people that aren't the police. And so to the point that traffic complaints are being called into town hall. Why would someone call town hall for a traffic complaint? Why is someone calling a counselor for drugs, right? I don't understand how that happened, and we have to change that mentality, and we have to educate people that, you know what, for police issues, call the police.
Very good. I think this board is putting out that edict, and I don't want to speak for my fellow counselors, but I imagine they're doing the same. I don't know, Andy, do you receive comments like that in your day-to-day?
I do receive some. It kind of makes me smile a bit because I was fire chief in town for almost 20 years, and I had the same problem. People would go to a counselor because their house was unsafe and stuff, and It's very frustrating why they don't call you, and I feel your pain, but for some reason this has been going on years and years and years in this town. I don't know why, but I dealt with it for many years as well.
Well, and it continues because it's never been stopped. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. When you're getting third and fourth hand information, you're not getting the truth or the quality information, or there's a time lag. Right. Yeah. And out of, say 99% of them that are maybe, fabricated or fictitious calls, that one could be something valuable that we need to act on. And because it gets through the chain and ends up in somewhere it doesn't need to be, that could actually jeopardize someone's safety.
Yeah. And I also find it's our fault too for, again, taking these calls. I know previous politicians, in fact, the previous mayor we used to have, would actually phone me at home with burn complaints because people would call him. Instead of saying, call the fire department, he would actually phone me at midnight and say, so-and-so's burning in his backyard, things like that. Yeah. And it can be very frustrating when they don't go through proper channels or tell people to go through proper channels.
Right. And thank you for that, because I agree with you 100%. And that just gets a bit frustrating because, again, right, we want to track these calls as well. And when they're coming in from, town hall, they're not they're not being tracked because they come to my email and then they're being sent somewhere else, and then they're, you know, by the time they go down the chain, and it's got to come in.
Agreed.
Good. Madam Secretary, did you have a?
Yes, with the new media officer, could we request that they put a bulletin out that residents contact the OPP directly? Maybe that could be a piece that they put out on social media channels to educate the residents further.
We've done that already.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
what needs to be done is when someone gets these calls, they need to be educating the public, right? And refusing to take those calls. But a lot of people are afraid they might lose a vote, so they don't do it. And then it just keeps that thing going. It keeps that chain going, right? Yeah. So yeah, we can definitely look at doing it again. But maybe we need to put it out and have, you know, Orangeville and some of the municipalities actually put it out on their websites as well, right? To kind of say, yeah, we're behind that message. It's not just the police, it's we agree with that message as well. So, yeah. But I'll definitely follow up with that too.
I think, you know, just as a clarification, when there is specifics, Inspector Ward, I certainly as a counselor understand that, and it is not my expertise, nor am I an operations person. But when there's general concerns about an area, and as an example, I was in Drew Brown last night, and there was a litany of different things that I was there for, from lawn maintenance to neighborhood general discussions to speeding down Drew Brown. So there isn't a report, but there's a general feeling that an area has an issue. And I think as a counselor that's well within my realm to be able to say, hey, you know, over in Veterans Way, there has been some complaints. If it were possible to have representation over in that area, it would be great.
Well, there's nothing wrong, Mr. Chair. As you know, you and I can have those conversations when it becomes, you know, it's a community thing, right? And, yes. it's a vast thing. But if it's something that actually could potentially be serious or could, I mean, those are the things that they can't be calling you and you put it aside for a day and then you make the call to me and it loses steam, right? In particular, that one subdivision you're just talking about, I had an email today reference to traffic complaints, and it went through town hall. So whoever was making the complaint made a phone call to town hall, and that's how it came back to me.
Mm. Yeah. Okay.
Very good.
Terry, did you get through?
So yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. One last question that came up. What is the OPP policy on golf courses right now? So if people are on a golf course and you know, it's against the provincial mandate, what is the OPP doing when they see people on a golf course?
Well, my understanding is, I mean, it's two things, right? A, you're breaching the emergency order, and B, you're trespassing.
So the OPP is intervening?
I guess, as far as I know, we haven't had any calls to that nature.
Okay, these are general public want to know.
So the only place that I've heard of that was down in Tillsonburg, right? Wasn't there? It was down there, and they actually set up and started charging everybody that was coming out.
Every day. Wow.
Yeah. So, but to my knowledge, around this area, we haven't had any complaints like that. I'm not saying it maybe isn't happening, but we haven't had any. But no one's called us to complain.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Board members, I'm going to move on. Very good. Okay. So item 10, the Police Services Board financials. We do not have the treasurer here, but if there's any questions, we can certainly pass them on and have her come to a future meeting. I think they're fairly straightforward at this point. Board members, any questions about the financials? No? Seeing none, could I have a motion that we receive the financials?
So moved.
Mary?
Yeah.
No seconder? Andy, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so human trafficking information. This is the Community Safety and Policing Grant. It's being put forward by our Special Projects Officer, Mary Lou Archer. It's been filed. And basically what happens is the province grants us funds for dealing with this area in particular. To me, I don't think there's anything for us to do. The report has been handled by Ms. Archer. Mr. Ward, I don't know if you want to say anything to this topic, but I think it's just for the board to receive.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that, Mr. Chair, is that it's a great idea. There was some great ideas put forward for training for the officers, and with COVID, everything's been shut down. So I know Staff Sergeant McLagan and Mary Lou and a bunch of others have tried repeatedly to get something going, and just because of COVID, everything shut down. So they've ended up getting an extension on that grant, so the money will be held longer. That hopefully some of this training will be released, and we can start to integrate our officers. So yes, so it's still moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Inspector Ward. Board members, could I have a motion to receive this report?
I'll do that.
Mary, thank you.
Ken, yes.
Ken, great. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're on to item 12, which is the Upper Grand District School Board Task Force on Police Presence. And there was a recent vote to, I guess, inhibit police presence in schools moving forward. Does any members wish to speak to this at all?
A couple of comments, if I may.
Yes.
I noticed, it's so lengthy. I mean, how many pages was it? 135 pages or something. And I think that they've gone into great pains to sort of produce this report and make it very relevant to kids today, and about BIPOC, and about transgender kids, and everybody, all of these problems that are arising in the secondary schools. So I am disappointed that they chose not to have a school resource officer. I think it was very valuable in Orangeville, and I believe Shelburne felt that it was valuable too. But I think, and I'm looking at the dates when they started to work on this, and when they had the invitations go out. I know that you yourself, Todd, put forward my name to be on one of the committees, but I think that at that point we were too late, because it was that period of time between when we were converting from being OPS to OPP, and there wasn't somebody that was specifically, it wasn't Wayne and it wasn't Terry. And so that few months there is when they actually met and decided. But I did notice that somebody from the Dufferin County OPP was on that committee and was involved in the research and the meetings and so on. I was glad to see.
OPP itself, Mary?
Sorry?
From the OPP?
Well, what was her name? I'm really sorry that she was our previous. She was the Dufferin OPP.
Nikki Randall.
That's right. Yes.
Nikki Randall.
So
Okay.
she was involved. So you were represented there, and I noticed that from reading the report. As I said, I'm sorry that they don't want the SROs in school, but I was glad to see, and I think Terry mentioned this in the past, that they're working to put together curriculum-based presentations that are relevant to today's kids. And I think we need to work with the school board so that we are part of that part of their program. And I think Terry has already talked about plans that they've got. And they're going to do a yearly review, and they're going to do an annual presentation. The police are going to make a presentation to them annually to say how it's working. So I think we need to sort of just keep within the boundaries of what they're doing and show that we're interested, even though we weren't actually represented.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really well said, Mary. Just to pick on what you have said, and there was some confusion through those reports, and suggesting that the final report had come to the board through myself. No report came to me. Otherwise, I would have shared. But I was getting information through Inspector Ward. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known what the outcome was, and we had to wait until we all received it post that date. So there was some sort of disconnect in the process as it pertains to us. So I don't know exactly how that went down, but it's a shame. Anyway, and I guess my last thing would be is I think it's a shame that we're not going to have police representation in our schools at the local level. It's something that's going to be missed. And I think back to my own years in school, and it's kind of nice to get to know those representatives. And it was a different kind of chatter, right? It was a good thing. But hopefully this new system works out as well. Ian, you'd like to speak to this matter?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I am in 100% agreement with what Mary has said. I actually read the report all the way through. It's interesting. The discontinuance, I mean, there were a lot of very supportive benefits articulated of having an SRO program within the schools. I think the discontinuance of the program is a bit of a blunt instrument response that was intended to be reactive to concerns over the need for additional training, the need to identify problems with current practices. So it wasn't so much the concept of the SRO program that was being criticized and discontinued as it was the current experiences, recognizing the current experiences from the existing program. So I'm very much encouraged that the annual review process will result in the police services adapting to what the report said with respect to what was needed, and that those adaptations will be successful in putting a pretty good case forward for reestablishing the SRO programs at an appropriate time, because I think they are tremendously useful.
Very good.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just comment on that. That we've already committed to the Upper Grand, that we're going to work with them and however we can. They've already connected with our Community Safety Services Bureau out of General Headquarters in Orillia. They are the keeper of the courses, so to speak, and they're going to work to make sure that the training moving forward meets their mandate, and that we maybe won't have that presence 100% of the time in the schools, but we'll definitely still be engaged if they call and ask us to do, drug awareness training or something along that lines. We're still going to engage. We're still going to do it, right? So we're still going to be involved. It'll be kind of on the perimeter, but we got to start somewhere, and we got to keep those relationships open in that line of communication, and we're more than engaged in that, which is going to be another one of the positions that we're going to create is a community liaison position, and that person will be responsible to liaise with the schools and some of the other committees in Dufferin County to make sure that everything works the way we want it to work, but also the way the school board wants to see it. So we keep those lines open.
That's great. Mary, do you want to speak to that?
Is this a trend across the province that school boards are taking this stance, no police presence in our schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting times. Okay, any further comments on that, board members? No, seeing none. Could I have a motion to receive that update? Mary?
So moved.
Second, Ken.
Ken, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And board members, my great friend, our secretary, is telling me that I should have asked for a motion to receive item 9, which was our update from Terry. Could I have a motion to receive that update? Andy, Mary,
Yes.
all in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Heather, for that. And we are on to item 13. And Terry, this might be of interest to our discussion that we had earlier. So these local residents who I know are community advocates and do a nice job in our community have written a letter to the Police Services Board. They've brought forward a traffic complaint pertaining to speeding and noisy vehicles, and they've raised their concerns to the OPP. And they've also brought forward this concern to the Police Services Board. I don't know, Terry, I don't want to put you on the spot. Did you want to speak to this? You're probably a step ahead of us in this if it's already been filed with the OPP.
I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Chair. I don't have an agenda. I never got an agenda, so I don't know what you.
I'm sorry.
So I can speak to that. It is bounced back, Terry. It's too large for your server. And so I did compress the file 3 separate times, but it bounced back again. So I sent you just the agenda, but I can send you this piece right now.
Okay,
Did you get the one I sent you this afternoon?
I did not.
Okay, because I sent one shortly after 4 o'clock.
Mm.
I will resend. Try again.
My apologies, Terry. Okay, board members, why don't we, in fairness, why don't we agree that we'll push item 13 to a future agenda? And we'll deal with this when it's a more respectful time. So item 14, this is the task force on policing in our schools. So is this just a receive, Madam Secretary, the final report, because it's covered off in the previous, it's covered off in item 12 and then it's here in item 14. Is that the same?
Basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Feels like we could skip item 14, board members. Would we agree to that? Okay, very good. So this is item 15, which is the mental health. Sorry, just a moment here. Yeah. So item 15, which is the grant for mental health initiatives, the final report. The documents are provided here, and the report has been put forward by Mary Lou Archer, who is the Special Projects Officer at the town of Orangeville. Does any board members have comments on this or wish to discuss? No, seeing none, could I have a motion to receive this?
So moved.
Second, Ken.
Ken, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. And then this brings us to the Black Cat speed measuring device, item 16, and it speaks to that Orangeville OPP have previously approached the Police Services Board for support in purchasing the Black Cat speed measuring device. MJ Walker, chair of the Mono Police Services Board, has approached police services boards with attachments in Dufferin County to consider sharing the cost of the Black Cat speed devices. Board members, would you like to speak to this item? Yes, Member Rhodes.
It would be through you to Terry. Is this a useful device for anywhere in the county? Is it more of an urban thing? Because I noticed Mono is very keen about it, but I thought if the whole of the county was doing that we should probably go per capita then in the cost of the item and not just Orangeville pay for it and Mono pay for it.
So just to answer Mary's question through the chair, I have a meeting on May 31st with the Orangeville Council. I'm making a play for Orangeville to purchase 2 Black Hats all on their own that will be used specifically in Orangeville. And I don't know if the board is familiar with this device. What it is that it's a hidden radar unit that actually gets put up on a pole in a neighborhood, on a street, on a roadway. It has a battery life of about 3 days in decent weather. You can't really use it in the winter because the battery drains so fast. But what it does is it just looks like a black box hooked to the pole, and it actually measures speeds. The Black Cats are very good at tracking and getting speeds. And then what we do is we go down after 3 days, we take it down, we download it, and we get a whole whack of analytics to the point that it can dial right in and tell us specifically we need to do radar enforcement between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Wednesdays. So we know that we're not wasting resources. We know where the problem is. We know, or the reverse is it tells us we don't have a problem and it's a perceived issue. So what it does is it saves me throwing resources out in an area where there actually isn't a problem. And the reverse to that is it actually helps us identify so we know exactly what times that we should be putting enforcement out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Inspector Ward, can you remind the board members of the cost of each one of those is approximately?
So it's approximately $4,600 per unit.
Very good. And you only think you need 2 of them for Orangeville proper?
I mean, again, right, it'd be nice to have as many as we could, but I think we could do well with 2 for sure to start.
Very good.
Terry, Ken, what's the lifespan of these black cats? The lifespan?
From my understanding, they're probably 10 to 15 years, provided they're well maintained. And if you have to, the upkeep maybe might be a new battery purchase, right?
Excellent. Member Rose, do you want to speak?
Just a question through you, so Todd. Who would pay for this then? Is this a council purchase? Because it's not in our budget.
Yes, that's why I'm going to council on the 31st. To the actual salesman for the company is actually coming to council to do a presentation. So yeah, they'd be purchased by Orangeville through council, and then they would strictly be used in Orangeville. So I know Chair Walker there, he kind of got wind of what I was doing and is now thinking that maybe, you know, they need to buy one for all the municipalities and different things. And I mean, it would be nice if they went out and bought one on their own, you know, that we could kind of look and put out, because when you share it, it kind of gets tossed around. And if there's a bunch of different speed complaints come in, it's kind of a crazy when, if you have it specific to the municipality, you just deploy it specifically in those municipalities, right? So.
How does board members feel about such a thing? Andy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think if Orangeville does purchase them, obviously they stay in Orangeville. Mono's got lots of money. If they want to buy them, they can buy them.
And to my understanding, Chair, that was kind of the response he got from the other outlying areas as well.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
No sharing.
Yeah. So the recommendation here is that the motion that the board receive, consider and discuss potential for cost sharing of the black speed devices to be utilized for sharing between attachments within Dufferin County. And if I was to rewrite that, I think we would say that kind of goes back to our theme of autonomy, and we would prefer to stay within in Orangeville. I can see 3 heads nodding. I'm not sure. Ken?
Yes, I agree with that.
Don't touch my cat.
Ian, did you want to weigh in at all, or are you comfortable?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I mean, I do know that in the past the OPS had sharing arrangements with Shelburne and other jurisdictions with respect to services. But I think we're beyond that. I think you know, this particular piece of equipment sounds like it should be dedicated to the jurisdiction that pays for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would it, if it pleased the board, I guess, I think the easiest thing for us to do is 2 of the members of the board will also be on that council meeting. I wonder if we just verbally share the wishes of the board as opposed to writing a letter. That
sounds good.
Support Inspector Ward in his quest and get these up and running.
Yep.
Seem reasonable?
Yep.
Okay. Could I have a motion to that effect? That
So we don't use the motion that's on the page then. We're just going to use it. We just change the wording.
We'll receive, but that member McIntosh
Right.
and member Taylor, or Chair Taylor, excuse me, represent the board and suggest that they're supportive of the decision of purchasing.
Sounds good.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
Yes.
Did you get, yes. Did you get
Sorry.
that, Madam Secretary?
So just that that yourself and member McIntosh will endorse procurement of devices only for use within Orangeville?
Correct. Purchased by Orangeville taxpayers for use within the 4 walls of Orangeville.
Okay, and moved by, I got Ken as the seconder.
I'll put it forward. Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mary. And everyone was in favor of that. Inspector Ward, just out of curiosity with this item, some of this, well, maybe it's just, I'll leave it as a comment. Some of the smaller streets within town that aren't well traveled, but seem to have a perceived speed problem would be ideal for something like this. And right away, I go back to Drew Brown, and I also think of Cedar. So when you're in your operations and you're considering, I'd be grateful if you consider those 2 streets.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's the purpose of these devices then, right? We can put them up for 3 days, not throw resources at it, come back, and we actually have a hard copy analytics to be able to show anybody that you don't have a speeding problem there.
It's good.
Good. Okay, very good. So that brings us on to item 17, which is a bit of a lesson for board members. I think if I was just, well, we might have questions. We have question period. But Dan, are you going to give an update on the SharePoint system? Is that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was going to give a very brief, high level, just 5-minute how to get into it and what you're looking for basically on the homepage.
That would be very appropriate. I think anything longer than that might require a special meeting if we had to get into the technical aspects of it. Member Rose, did you have a question?
I have got to make a confession that when this came up on my screen and I had no idea what it was, I put it in the junk. So I don't have anything to say about this because I've got nothing to look at. So Dan, I really apologize. I get the weirdest things on our thing. I get real estate things from Perry Meeker, and I get all kinds of shoe sales. And the weird, so I thought this is another bit of rubbish bin. So I don't have it, Dan. I'm sorry.
You gotta use your town computer for town business, Mary.
It's my computer. Do you mind?
Okay, so Dan, if you could give us a brief 5-minute explanation. And
he's got to put it back. He's got to give me the copy of it again whenever you have time.
May I ask a question at the beginning? Would Inspector Ward also have access to this so that obviously we had an embarrassing situation here where he couldn't view? Is he going to be able to have access to this to see things or no?
So through you, Mr. Chair, yes, he can. So that is actually one of the benefits of SharePoint. You can invite. It's not obviously it's not designed to go out to the general public as a free for all to everybody, but strategic partnerships, strategic guests such as Mr. Ward. Yes, you can share the information with them where they can access it. It would just be very similar. So back to Mary's point that it kind of did come out as a weird email because it comes out from Microsoft. Just, hey, click here, you've been invited. It will be similar to that that Mr. Ward gets. It'll just say this file's been shared with you. Click here to open it. So he would be able to access it as well. If there's any changes to the document afterwards, he would always have that link. So if if he got it on a Thursday and then on a Friday, something were to get updated, he would always have the most recent updated copy with avoiding, the emails back and forth of which version is the most recent one.
That's excellent. Okay.
Dan, I'm like Mary, anything from you, I'm deleting.
Well, it doesn't come from me. That's the best part. We set it up.
Wasn't from Dan.
Are you giving us a visual tour, Dan, or?
Yeah, so I'm just going to find the right window here. Okay, so so this is your current SharePoint site. We already have a couple members who have gone into it, and there is some, what I see here, some in-camera stuff. So I'm not going to click around too much and on the current site here. And I am going to send an email to every member of the board after this meeting with this link up here, just in case that original email went to your junk folder or it got deleted. I really can't blame anybody because at that point it was just setting up the site. And when we set up the site, it does automatically trigger out that initial welcome email when we invite people in.
Very good.
So the product we're using here is Microsoft SharePoint, and it is a very large product. So we have kind of scoped it down to try and just make it work for kind of the requirements that the board asked for at the last meeting, which was really the biggest thing was document management, managing these meeting minutes. So you'll notice this is the home page of when you log into SharePoint here. And I actually just cleaned it up at the start of this meeting here because there was a couple more things, but I've cleaned it up that it's just showing your documents here, which would be anything you upload to SharePoint or create in here. And the other thing I kept is this, which is an activity feed down here. And all this is showing you is any recent document and when it's been changed. If you just want a quick view, it tries to give you a little more visualistic if it helps people. And if not, then, you don't have to use it either. So, yes.
Could you touch on security for us? Because I have not put anything into the in-camera folder.
Sure. So, so Microsoft SharePoint in itself. So right now there's actually 4 levels that we can go to with security. So the level we're working at right now is the site as a whole, which is this entire piece right here. And all board members have the security level that they can go on this site and they can contribute to this site, which means they can read documents and they can add documents. So if anything's added on here, all board members will be able to see it. You can make that security more finite if you want. So if you wanted to say, at this document library level, I only want certain people to be able to edit, but other ones, some can view, only some can edit. You can change those permissions as well. You can also do it at a specific folder level or a specific file level if you want to as well. Now, the folder and the file levels, they're not generally recommended by Microsoft or myself, just from experience with this, just because it gets very difficult to manage the permissions. You start forgetting who has access where when you start going that finite, but it can be done. So for the sake of the board, what I would actually recommend for this SharePoint site is you can create more than one of these libraries to hold documents. Maybe create one for open minutes or documents and one for in-camera documents and minutes, and then the permissions can be set at the 2 libraries. And you always know if you're in this area, it's in camera. If you're in this area, it's public, and it keeps it a little more simple that way. So back to the actual product here. So if we're in SharePoint, this is the home page that you see here, and you have the documents and the activity here. So any new documents or anything that gets added or created will show up on this home screen here. You can create folders or you can create documents themselves. So you'll notice it has some tabs along the top here. So there's the new button. If you want, you can, it is a Microsoft product and it does naturally integrate with other Microsoft Office products. So you can hit the new button here and actually create a Word document or an Excel workbook right from SharePoint here, and it will actually just jump right in and create it for you and start the document and automatically save it back to SharePoint. So I'm just going to refresh there. So that one I just did, it's blank. I didn't put anything in it, but you'll see here it automatically created that new one here and it's saved in SharePoint. The other nice benefit to this is as you're typing here, whatever you're putting in, it automatically saves along the top. So it was quick there, but it was saying it was saving. As you type, it saves because it's going to the cloud. So you never have to worry about, oh crap, my computer froze and I forgot to save that. It saves documents on the fly. The last nice benefit with this is you can have multiple people in this document at the same time working on the document. It will, as say I have Chair Taylor in here working with me on the document, as he's typing things, it will update on my screen with the words that he's typing. So you can have multiple people collaborating at the same time on a document if you're working on it. So, so that's kind of the high level of, you know, creating a document and seeing the documents. You can also, if you want to, you know, traditionally people have Microsoft Word or the desktop applications and that's what they're used to. You can also go that route as well. So for example, this document here, if I wanted to open it again, because they're Microsoft products, you can just right click here and open. If you say open in the app, I don't know if this is showing or not. It might have lost my screen here, which I believe it did. Just give me 1 second. And I'll do that again. So you can right click here on any document as well and just go, instead of opening the browser, opening the app, and it will just naturally open it in the desktop Microsoft Word that most people are familiar with working with as well, if you want to link them directly. The last thing here with the document libraries is sometimes too, you may work on it on your desktop or somewhere else. Although it is encouraged that you work within SharePoint because it has those autosave functionality and that extra features. But if for whatever reason you have worked on your desktop or, you know, somewhere else and you don't have it on SharePoint here, there is the upload button here and it's just click it and you can hit files and it's select whatever file it is you want to upload and it will just put it onto SharePoint. Get rid of that quickly here. Another feature that the board had mentioned last time was the ability to have alerts or notifications when documents have changed or when something has happened. So this is kind of the home screen view, and it's kind of a quick view where everybody can get in and see everything at a bird's eye view. But you can also jump into the document library and get a few more features if you want to. And you'll notice it's kind of small, but there's this see all button that sits in the upper right here. It takes you to a view that's very similar here, but it's just focused on the document library and some more features about the document library. The reason this is important is because one of the critical features it gives you is the alert me feature here. So that's if members want to know, that's if something, you can set it up in a multitude of ways here. And you'll see here it gives you a bunch of options, but basically this is letting you set up alerts for yourself for any documents that change, or you can have it however you want. You can say anything that changes whatsoever, alert me immediately. You can say only when new items are added. I want a daily summary, send them immediately, but you can mix and match here however you want and set up alerts for yourself. And what this will do is based on the parameters you have here. So the default one is anything changes right away, send me a notification. If that's the alert that I set and say Heather goes in here and adds a new document, it's going to send an email to me right away that a new document's been added. Here's the link if you want to go and see it. So it gives that functionality as well to board members. So as I mentioned earlier, SharePoint has a lot of features. There is a lot more in this, and sometimes you can click and find other things, but for the sake of starting, what I thought I would focus on for the board for this month and to start here is just the documents and the document library management. And that kind of gives a little brief overview of how to do it. And sorry, one more thing before I go. It does have an actually very sophisticated search within SharePoint. So this is quite small right now, the number of documents that are in here, but obviously as the board continues on, this is going to grow. So this search is very, they've spent a lot of money to try and focus in on this, and they actually try and make this as people's starting point in here. If you know what you're looking for, and I'm just because it's at the top, PSB accounts, if that's what I'm looking for, as you type, it tries to find the files in here and tries to build you a little quick result here. And the idea with that is, time is precious nowadays, so we don't want to waste time looking through documents and getting frustrated. So it's just use the search and try and find what you're looking for that way to start.
Excellent.
And that's my kind of brief high-level overview to start with the board for.
That's great, Mary. Thank you. Just so next steps. You're going to send out another invite to all of us, I guess, and make sure that we're linked in, and including Inspector Ward to that. And then for next meeting, Heather, would we simply send out the link through SharePoint and people will click on the link, and that's how we'll access the board meeting next time?
That would be ideal.
Mary, you look pained by that.
I can send
I may
Mary.
or may not join you that day.
I will send Mary a separate PDF if that's what she wishes.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is science fiction as far as I'm concerned.
I just want to make sure, we can't have a situation where we're trying to have a conversation about important matters and one of the members hasn't received it, in particular the inspector. That's not a good thing. So, okay. So that's great. Yes.
If I could speak to that, it was sent to him. If you look at the.
Oh, I don't doubt it at all. It's just the size of the file. It's not incompetence by any stretch. I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, because I've
Yeah.
now tried to send it to him 4 times while Dan's been doing the overview and.
No problem, Heather. Please.
Well, so Heather, you haven't been paying attention to Dan then?
I
She
can
knows it.
multitask. I am a woman, Inspector Ward. I can multitask.
I don't know what. Yeah, I know. I see you trying to send it, and I don't know why it won't come through. That maybe we can hook up some other time this week and see if we can get it to work, because I don't know what it is. I see you trying to send it. It just won't grab it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, moving forward, we'll be in this new
Mr.
system. So
Mr. Chair, I wonder if I can make a suggestion. Mr. Chair, I wonder if I can
Yes.
make a suggestion.
Please.
So given that for our next meeting, we will be using this link for the first time, I think it would be helpful if in advance of sending it out to the board members, generally, if Heather sends it to Todd, to you and I, and we make sure that we try to troubleshoot any issues before it goes out to the board.
Sure. as long as we can do it in enough time that people can review the documentation. So we can have a fruitful discussion, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Can I have a motion to receive our education by the amazing Mr. Bonato?
Moved, Ken.
Andy and Ken, all in favor?
Yes.
You? Okay.
Yes.
Item 18, we are going to call a special meeting and work through the bylaw review. So I don't think we need to discuss that.
No.
And that special meeting will be in closed session, correct? And we have
Yes.
set the date already, and our secretary is going to send out the meeting request for that. So I don't think we need to cover off 18, which would bring us to item 19. And that is adoption of the minutes of the previous board meetings. So what we're looking for right now is the public session that was held on April 20th. And we're looking for a motion that the minutes from that meeting be approved.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Can I have a second?
Second.
Ian,
Ian.
thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
That was me. Yes.
That, Madam Secretary, if I may, the adoption of the previous board meeting minutes, and I just want to be clear, where are we set up with council right now? Are we good? Are we up to date?
So I am going to be speaking with them later this week or next week, just to go through it. Apparently there's a process, and I'm going to get educated on that process.
Oh,
And
great.
then we will be up to date once I meet with, and I will give you Tracy McDonald.
Okay. Could you, just as a personal request, the meeting is the 31st. So Andy, help me out. I think, is it the Thursday prior we have to have things in by? Is that the deadline date? Mary, do you remember? Anyway, it would just be great to catch up on the 31st if we could. So if they were able to be in by mid next week, say Thursday close of business, I think we make the deadline. So that's a week away. Is that possible, Madam Secretary, to be able to do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Okay.
So my recollection is that the last time I sent them in when I was acting secretary was the February minutes. So I think at most the what we would have outstanding would be March and April.
Oh, very good. So we're good on 19, and then item 20. Item 20 is member claims for special remunerations, and there has been 4 such occasions. And the recommendation is that the board approve these special remunerations and expenses for payment. Could I have a motion to do so? Member Rose, Member McIntosh, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Very
I have
good.
a question.
Certainly.
It's about the request from Heather to sign off on the remuneration forms. I do not have the technology to do this signing from here and sending it through. So in the past, the secretaries or Ian signed for me on those remuneration forms. I'm wondering if we can still follow up with, is that still okay with everyone?
That would be ditto for me too.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that has been approved, and we're now at question period, and I'm reluctant to ask Mona or Dan, but I bet there's no question.
Mr. Chair, if we could just go back, I just wanted to make sure that the secretary was also keeping a cumulative report for 2021 on the appendix attached to the policy.
And that would be the expenses, the incurred expenses?
Yes.
Yes. The
Yeah.
remuneration and expenses.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Yes, so I have a tally of that.
Okay, so I think Madam Secretary, if you could put that on the next agenda as a
Okay.
report item.
Okay.
Great. Okay, Dan and Mona, I assume we're good for item 21 question period.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are currently no questions.
Great.
Anybody on the line?
Items 20 through 25, I see none. Any items under new business? No, seeing none. That leaves us at item 27, and that is Member McIntosh's favorite time. I ask you to lead this process for us. Very good.
I'll second that.
Aaron, McIntosh, Rose, all in favor?
Yes.
Very good. Very, very good to see you. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And everyone else too. Thank you, Dan and Mona, and have a nice night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thank- Are you going to stay on the line, Todd?
We have to